This is the daily message for July 14th. So far in Module 2, we started out by looking at one way that researchers can collect data, and that is through surveys. And then next we looked at why researchers want to collect data. And so the reason they want to collect data is researchers want to learn about a population, and in particular they want to learn about some characteristic of the population, and we call that the parameter. Since obtaining or looking at every element of a population can be very difficult, instead what researchers do is they take a sample, and from that sample they calculate a statistic in hopes that they can use that statistic to estimate the parameter they're interested in. Now, what we haven't talked about yet is how to use, or how to collect that sample so that we can use the statistic to estimate the parameter. And it actually ends up that how we select the sample is incredibly important. And so the first thing we're going to look at today are what are called simple random samples. And this is a sample that is randomly selected and usually gives very good inference. And we're actually going to look at methods later on in the course, and in order to use those methods we have to have random samples or simple random samples. What you're going to find out though is actually gathering a simple random sample from a population can be extremely difficult. And we call random samples, we call them probabilistic samples, and that's because there's probability involved in how they're selected. In other words, those samples are selected randomly. Since getting simple random samples is very difficult, a lot of the time researchers will resort to what is called a non-probabilistic sample. And you're going to look at just 4 examples of those today, and then also while you're looking at those examples you're going to hopefully find some problems, or in other words some stuff that can go wrong when you use non-probabilistic samples, and so that's why simple random sampling is so important. Now for the rest of the course from now on, the data that we look at is going to come from simple random samples, and so today I'm just going to give you a glimpse at some of the other ones, but know that moving forward we're going to require that our samples be simple random samples. Now I want to take this time just for a minute to talk about a little bit more about Beyond the Classroom 2. So as you know, for Beyond the Classroom 2 you are going to have to write a survey, and you have to distribute that survey to 25 people. And it's at this point in the course where students say, oh, well, since I'm giving my survey to 25 people, do those people need to be randomly selected? And the answer for right now is no, they do not. What you're going to find out is we need simple random samples to use most of the inference techniques that you're going to see in this course, but also getting simple random samples is incredibly difficult. So I'm not requiring you to randomly select the participants for your survey. I'm just requiring that you get 25 participants. And then what I'm asking is in your paper when you go to analyze that data, you just acknowledge the fact that you know that your sample is not random, and you say why it's not random, and say, hey, but I'm going to go ahead and show you the methods from the course just to illustrate how it's done, but that you recognize normally you wouldn't be able to do that because you will not have a random sample. So as always, if you have any questions, feel free to ask, and I will talk to you tomorrow.